Good morning, class. I'm glad to be with you this morning. I'm sitting here in my office. As you can see, this is my office behind me. And these are just some of the books that I use for my studying, my reading, and as I prepare my sermons. I usually speak twice a week, 3 times a week, so that's sort of what I do. Now, our subject this morning has to do with plagiarism. I thought I would read out of a textbook, and I'll just show it to you. It's this textbook, and just define it, and then we will talk a little bit more about it. So a paper that relies on research is a collaboration between you and your sources. To be fair and ethical, you must acknowledge your debt to the writers of those sources. When you acknowledge your sources, you avoid plagiarism, a serious academic offense. So really what we're doing, we are doing research, we are reading, we are listening to different speakers, and we acknowledge that this is not from us, but that we've received it. And in reality, we are a product of what we have heard, seen, and thought of over the years. So many things we do say, in essence, do come from others, yet it got mixed into this pot of our brain and sort of gets mixed around, and eventually it does become our own. So it's an important thing that we do this to give credit where credit is due. And also, I'd like to read us a portion of scripture out of Acts 17, just one verse, the 11th verse. These were more fair-minded than those in Thessalonica, in that they received the word with all readiness and searched the scriptures daily to find out whether these things were so. Here, Luke is telling us of a people that searched the scriptures, and in order to search the scriptures, Paul must have shared with them where he had found these different verses. So again, when we give references, we are not only avoiding plagiarism. In that sense, we are also assisting our listeners or readers in that we are helping them do their research. And that is a critical part of this, as far as I'm concerned, that we help our listeners do further research. I often listen to different speakers, and I like it when they make reference to books. I often write down the names of the books, and if they recommend them, I will order them. Or if they say a quote and make us aware of a certain person, I will then actually perhaps buy a book regarding the life of that person. So I've done that often, and through that way I've come up with some great books. So again, the references serve many purposes. One, to acknowledge those that assisted us, and to assist our listeners. So how do we avoid pulpit plagiarism? That's really what we're talking about this morning. One speaker that I often listen to, Chuck Swindoll, he often brings a book along and reads directly out of the book. Now, there are times when we can do that, and maybe there are times when we cannot do that. But I have started doing that, and I actually like it. I like taking the book along. I have it right in front of me. When I want to read something, I read it, and in that way, my listeners are aware of what I am reading, and they then can choose to buy that book as well. So that's one way. We can also give references. I read this in this book, or this author wrote this. And I think we have to be careful, though, that we don't get up and we fill up a whole sermon with references. Otherwise, our audience thinks, all the guy is doing is reading. He's not really thinking. So I think we need to be careful as well how many references we put into our speaking, especially when it's not scripturally based. And again, when we do use scripture, just to remind us, the only infallible part of our sermon is when we do read scripture. When we speak from our mind, that is fallible. So it's good if we put in a lot of Bible verses, read them directly. It's important that our audience, especially in churches, that they realize the importance of Scripture. And the more we put Scripture and the more we preach out of Scripture, the more we let Scripture explain itself, the safer we are. So if we're working on one Bible theme, we can take that and we can work through and work other Bible verses into that thing that is good for us and good for our audience. What we desperately need is to give our churches more Bible base and Bible knowledge. And we want to encourage them to bring their Bibles along. And if we do that, we have to make sure that we are reading out of the Bible, that they can work along with us and follow our thought pattern. If necessary, we can also give website information. I've done that in the past. I have received this or found this on a certain website, or if I'm doing it on a PowerPoint, I will add that website onto the PowerPoint presentation. And in this way, hopefully encourage my listeners to do further research into the topic that we're dealing with. I think that's really what we want to do. If our audience leaves church on Sunday morning with questions and they research them, then we've done a good job. If they walk out of church and go, good job, good sermon, and they walk out and they never think of it again, it hasn't really helped them. But if we can assist them in doing further research, then I think we have done well. So again, we need to be careful with our sources, to acknowledge them, and I would encourage us that our main source always is Scripture. Thank you.